some of the Zooms that the Rays players have been doing. I know a lot of those guys were not drafted by you, but a lot of them are saying some similar things that I hear a lot of Dodger players say, which is that the way the organization treats them, it allows them to be themselves. It allows them to feel comfortable, and that translates directly to how they play on the field. And for all the talk about how analytic, your models are and how similar that is, that's a very human sentiment. And I'm wondering, like, how much of that is you? Is that something you really tried to introduce and instill when you were there in Tampa and also bring here to LA?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there are narratives out there in terms of if you use information to help guide decisions. But at the core of what we do, we're involved with trying to provide the best environment and culture for people to thrive. And I don't think that's different in any business. And it was something that was really important to us when I was with the Rays, and it's something that's really important to us now. I think when guys are more comfortable, they perform better. And I think that stems from, having honest conversations with people, and just the consistency of message, and everyone really being on the same page. And it doesn't mean that we don't disagree, but I think culture is incredibly important to organizational success, and have believed in that for a long time. But I think a lot of that, for me, from the early years, really stemmed from the Rays owner, Stu Sternberg, who that was, a real tenet of his and something that he believed strongly in. And, so much of my growth professionally, was with Stu as a mentor. And, he has done an immeasurable amount for me and my family. And, a lot of what I've learned in a lot of respects has come from him.
Next question is from Alanna Rizzo. Go ahead.
Andrew, congratulations. You were one of the original architects of this Tampa Bay team, and while you draft all of them or have your hand in all of them, you know the blueprint of what makes them successful. What is it about this team that you think can pose its challenges, and what is it about your current team that you think you guys can win this series?
Yeah, they are an incredibly talented team. Obviously, they have the big three horses at the top of their rotation. Also, Ryan Yarbrough has been really good. They have some really good relievers in the back end of their pen, and they're just an extremely deep roster. And, I think it's something that there are some similarities between us in that respect. And I think Kevin Cash does a tremendous job of just continuously putting his players in the best position to succeed. And so, I think there are a lot of similarities. And it will be really interesting, kind of going up against them. Obviously, over the years, I've watched him play a lot. Kevin Cash came to the Rays after I left, but it's been really fun watching him manage games and just the relationships he has with his players and the trust and the culture that, is in place. And, again, I think, that more often than not leads to success, and it's been fun watching them do what they've done.
Dave Roberts yesterday in the acceptance speech for the National League Championship was more emotional than I've seen him, in terms of not so much rah-rah, but really emotional. What are you the most proud of when it comes to this group and this year in particular?
I talked about this the other day. I think in years past, when I have complained about, being overwhelmed or busy, I had no idea what 2020 was going to look like. And just the amount that's gone on into all of this. And obviously it's been such a difficult and trying year for everyone in the world. And just the amount of things that had to come together and the number of people who needed to be rowing in the same direction, for us to get to that point was, emotionally and physically taxing throughout. And, going from 4 or 5 months ago with not knowing whether we were going to get to see this 2020 Dodgers team even play, to that point on the podium was emotional for all of us.
Thank you.
Next question's from Jorge Castillo. Go ahead.
Andrew, is facing them awkward for you?
It's a good question. I've been trying to process it today. Obviously, watched the end of their game Saturday and saw that they were advancing on. And at that point, it was just pure happiness for them. And we still had a lot of work to do. And so all of my energy and attention was on Game 7. And, kind of hit me today, waking up and processing all the text messages and, questions about it. It's definitely surreal. We joke, some of my best friends in life are there. And, we joked when I left the team that we were going to meet up in the World Series one day. And for it actually to happen is surreal.
Are you in contact with Eric and all those guys pretty often, way more so than, during the season, whenever?
Yeah, for sure.
And do you find yourself watching their games more than maybe any other team? Do you find yourself trying to look for their games?
No, I mean, I think it works out pretty well just with the time zone advantage, where oftentimes their games are on at 4, and so I'll be in my office doing stuff and put their game on. So I've definitely watched a good number of their games over the years.
And just lastly, how different is your blueprint, how you operate, the information that you use now than when you left that organization 5-6 years ago?
I think, core kind of principles are still in place, but I think anyone who does this for a living is trying to grow, evolve, learn as we go. And so, I've certainly learned a lot over the last 6 years, as I'm sure they have as well. And so, it's something from my standpoint is that I have a good feel for how those guys think. They have a good feel for how I think. But, at the core of this is 2 really talented teams going up against one another in what should be a really good series.
Next question's from Bill Plunkett. Go ahead.
Andrew, you know very well the difference in resources between the 2 franchises. How does a team like the Rays end up in the World Series competing on the field at the same level as the Dodgers?
I mean, payrolls don't decide the standings, and I think we see evidence of that every year. And I think having a really deep and talented roster, regardless of what your payroll is the key to winning games. And that's what they have. And it's been through a lot of very shrewd moves, some through the draft, some through trades, and all kinds of different creative ways of, player procurement. And so, here they are, and it's not by accident. Eric Neander and his team of guys right now with Peter Bendix and Carlos Rodriguez are really, really good at what they do. And so it's not by accident that they were able to put this roster together. And it's going to be really fun competing against them.
This afternoon, Tyler Glasnow, during his press conference, said that he grew up with the Rays contending every year. First of all, did you realize that Tyler was only 15 years old? And secondly, do you take pride in something like that?
That's pretty awesome. No, I do need to check Glasnow's birth certificate now. Maybe we'll do that right before first pitch. But that is really cool. And, I think just kind of growing up in the game with the people that I did working with the Rays, we all started together and went to each other's weddings and were there when our kids were born. And, it was just an amazing chapter of my life, and the success that we were able to have, especially in the division that we played in, was incredibly rewarding. And I'll always think back on those times with the fondest of memories.
Next question's from Andy McCullough. Go ahead.
Hey, Andrew, man, Plunkett's question really made me feel old.
Me too.
Have you heard from Heim Bloom and James Click of who they are rooting for in this series?
I have heard from them. I didn't feel like putting them on the spot, but if you could text them and let me know, that'd be awesome.
I think I only have one of their numbers. When you say your core principles haven't changed, what would you say those are?
Oh man, I need a little time to digest. I mean, I think a lot of it stems from, really valuing guys who can do a lot of different things on a baseball field, and adding value on defense, on the bases, in the batter's box. Pitchers that have multiple weapons and can execute pitches, and we do a lot of digging on people's makeup and their work ethic, and trying to get a feel for how they will fit within our environment. And it doesn't mean that if they don't, that it's wrong. It just, we won't necessarily be able to get the most out of those players. And so I think it's something for us that continues to grow and evolve, but fundamentally speaking. Hey Doc, can you keep it down, please? I think fundamentally speaking, guys in the batter's box that are passive on pitches out of the zone, aggressive on pitches in the zone, and can do damage, and also that add value on defense, and pitchers that have multiple weapons and can execute pitches. But to get back to the earlier point, I think the overarching pillar is culture and environment in our front office, in our clubhouse. It's something that is extremely important to all of us. And we feel like, it's a difficult thing to put your finger on and to quantify, but it's one of those things that when you have it, you know it. And when you don't, you know it in the most glaring of ways.
I got time for one more. Go ahead, Pete.
Andrew, when you traded for Mookie Betts, how much of the, obviously he was a great player, but how much of it was, when you talk about culture and bringing the right attitude to a team, was that part of the equation?
It was a huge part of the equation. I mean, from our standpoint, to make the investment that we did in terms of the players that we gave up to acquire them, spoke to how much we felt like he was, a really key critical piece for us to add into the existing core that we had. And then to back it up with the contract that we did, just speaks to our belief in him, not only as a player, but as a person. And that's the bet that we were making, and one that we felt really comfortable with then. And now watching it play out, feel even more comfortable at this point.
Thanks, Andrew. Dave Roberts is now available.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you, number 30 in your program, but number 1 in your heart, Doc.
Thank you,
Nice
guys.
job, Andrew.
Thank you.
Andrew warmed it up for me.